Nicholas Vince on the Fish Bowl. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Sam.
Great to have you on the show. Thank you for all my listeners. Nick and me were just talking about our birthdays and how mine is tomorrow, the 18th, and his is coming up next month. Mine is the big 3-0, and Nicholas is the big 6-0. So,
Hmm.
um, Nicholas, thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
What a lovely analogy. I wish I bought a snorkel.
I hope the temperature is just right.
It's absolutely lovely, and I'm really enjoying this nice little plaster castle thing for the goldfish to swim in.
Awesome. Awesome. So the first thing that I'd like to ask you is what got you interested in film?
That's a very good question. When I grew up, all those many years ago in the UK, there were two channels. There was the BBC and the commercial channel. And my parents didn't think much of the commercial channel, so we mostly watched the BBC. And on the BBC, they tended to show on Sunday afternoons. Saturday afternoons was sport, Sunday afternoons would be a black and white movie. A lot of westerns, a lot of war films, because we're talking about the 1960s. So, there was an awful lot of that sort of thing going on, and westerns. But I really kind of like, and I think I probably watched Casablanca on a Sunday afternoon in black and white on a black and white TV. I was always just, and I remember being really fascinated by these films and so on. And obviously, TV programs like Doctor Who and so on. And just, yeah, just being really interested in films and then being taken to the cinema. That was a big experience. I remember the first ever movie I saw was a Walt Disney movie called Tenderfoot, um, which I should keep on meaning to look up on IMDb. It's not a well-known one. So yeah, from a very early age, we were, Mum used to take us to the cinema fairly regularly, particularly during school holidays.
Awesome. Awesome. For me, my first memory actually is being in a movie theater watching Back to the Future Part 3.
Really?
Yeah, and that franchise has always stuck with me because it's literally, I was 3 years old, and it's just as far as I can think back, that's the first memory, and
Wow.
I always just think that's kind of special because, it's one of the greatest trilogies of all time.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, at that time, I would have been working because when I made Hellraiser, I was also my pay the rent job. Although I was living at home with my parents at the time, was working in a local arts centre. And I remember our boss putting up a poster for Back to the Future like 6 weeks before the movie was due in the theatre, and just not understanding it and just not thinking and wondering why he'd done it because he never did it with anything else. Normally you had posters a week before or most 2 weeks before, but this was up. It may even have been longer for the original. So it's very iconic as far as I'm concerned. It's a great series. You're absolutely right. In fact, I went to somebody's birthday party the other day and they were dressed as Marty McFly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had the chance few years ago at Pittsburgh's Steel City Con, which actually just happened this past weekend. I had a chance to meet Christopher Lloyd, and
Wow.
it was a great experience. And actually, not this past Steel City Con, but the one before, um, the guy who plays Biff was there. So I've gotten like two of the Back to the Future cast members out of the way.
Right. How old is Christopher Lloyd now? He must be in his 80s.
I want to say he's in his mid late 70s
Right,
at this
right.
point. Yeah.
And whenever you think of it, he looks that age anyway. You
Right.
know,
Right.
Yeah, great actor.
Yes, most definitely. I love him and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was another one of my all-time favorite movies growing up as a kid, and so much so that that's actually how my sister got her name Jessica.
Really,
Yeah.
I used to have a T-shirt which I was very, very fond of, which was saying, "I'm not really bad. I'm just born that, drawn that way." It was great. A friend of mine, her husband worked on it. He was an animator, Joe, because a lot of the animation was done in the UK. And in fact, a lot of the filming, I think, quite a bit of the filming was done in the UK. And I remember, just having a huge great, and in fact, she got a credit as well. She did something on the movie as well. I just remember sitting in the cinema because she very kindly invited me to a casting crew screening of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the Leicester Square. That was amazing. Extraordinary. No, never seen anything like it.
Absolutely. It's still one of my all-time favorite films because I'm a huge animation nut, and I love just cartoons and that 2D animation style. And growing up basically in like the height of animation, basically when it reached its peak, um, you know, watching Nickelodeon and um, seeing movies like the transition of like um, 2D animation into like live action was like really interesting and a cool
Mm,
concept. And I really like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but the when I got older, I watched Ralph Bakshi's Cool World, and I kind of considered Cool World like the adult version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
right.
and and but those types of movies were always like really interesting to me, and I thought was just a cool concept of like the cross universe of like um, 2D animation and the Looney Tunes world or the animated world, intertwined with the human, you know, uh, reality.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. There must have been earlier versions of the idea. Oh well, of course, Mary
Mary
Poppins.
Poppins, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're gonna. That's probably trying to think of any of the other. I think Mary Poppins was probably the one that. Yeah, it's going to be Mary Poppins, and the idea of having live action amongst the cartoon and interacting with them so closely as well is probably the first time I saw it and really was marveled by it.
Absolutely. That's also one of my favorite childhood films growing up, the original Mary Poppins. And I hear that I saw the trailer for the new one that
Mm,
Elizabeth no Emily Blunt is starring in,
yes,
and
it looks really good.
yeah, it actually looks pretty good.
I remember going to see the stage show of Mary Poppins, which is quite different, and kids crying because at points it's really scary. Um, and then me crying because it's the bit where the kids give the money, offer the sixpences from their piggy banks to their father because they know that the family's in financial trouble. It's like that gets it. Me and my mate got to see it, both in that, both middle-aged men. This is really sad.
Now, one of my other, I just have to say this, childhood films that I actually had the sheets of was Hook, and I remember having like my first kind of introduction to like seeing London on film was in Hook, and I know it's like not a huge segment, but just seeing London on screen was a very cool experience for me because I haven't had a chance to visit London just yet, but it's on the bucket list of places to come and visit. And I've always been fascinated with the culture and the film and the history, and I guess seeing like London on screen and Hook kind of like, got me on the path of like this is someplace I need to come visit.
Right, right. Yeah, well, it's a wonderful place. I'm very fond of our city. Trying to think the first time I would have seen New York or America. Of course, everything was in black and white. Everything was in black and white when I first would have seen it. I remember first going to New York, and that would have been after Nightbreed, filming Nightbreed. I went across the States and did both New York. Very kindly stayed with Aunt Bobby, who plays Laurie in Nightbreed. Um, I remember, yeah. In fact, I remember it was winter. It was snowing. We stayed on a street called Mulberry Street, and I remember Anne saying to me, "Nick, you don't need to worry about being mugged because there are two mafia clubs on this street." I'm thinking, how do you know there are mafia clubs? And then blow me when I was watching documentaries on the mafia. They were saying, yeah, they're explaining how the FBI had bugged the mafia clubs in Mulberry Street in New York. I thought, oh, okay, yeah, she wasn't joking. Okay.
Now, my dad is actually from New York, and he has this story he told like loves to tell me, and it's such like a iconic kind of like vivid story the way he tells it. And basically, my when my dad was in high school, he cut school one day and he was walking downtown in New York City, and he like basically was walking and he came upon this crime scene, this like fresh crime scene that just happened at this Italian restaurant where this mob boss was assassinated. And
Wow.
it's like literally something out of the movies where the guy still has like one of those giant fat, cigars lit in his mouth, and he's just like all shot up. I don't know who the mob boss was, but it was like something straight out of like, The Godfather or
Wow.
Goodfellas or something.
Yeah. Fortunately, I think mostly those days are, well, there's still violence, there's still gun violence, but yeah. Yes, different times.
Yeah, yeah. On a much upper no,
Mm,
um, let's talk about Hellraiser 1 and 2.
hmm.
Um, I have a number of questions to ask you about both those movies.
Sure.
The first thing I like to know is just working with Clive Barker come to be.
Basically, I knew Clive anyway. I'd known Clive for about 3 years before we made Hellraiser. I'd met him at a party in Crouch End because he used to live near the drama school where I went to drama school. And shortly after I graduated, I went to this party. I was invited to a friend, Simon Bamford, who plays Butterball, had already started working with Clive because Clive had invited him to become part of the Dog Company, the Fringe theatre company that Clive kind of wrote for and directed most of the shows. Doug Bradley was part of that company as well. And Clive, when it came to doing the monsters in the movie, Clive just asked his mates to be monsters, which is really good of him. So, yeah, and the classic line was Clive said, would you like to play a part in a movie? There is some makeup involved. Which and Simon and I reckon he used the same line on both of us. Yeah, and he just asked us, which is really very good of him to support his mates as far as I was concerned. So yeah, that's how it all started.
Awesome, awesome. And speaking of the makeup, was like how long did all that take?
Well, my smart aleck answer over the last few years has become about 3 months because if you think about it, we had to do life casts to begin with. In fact, they did a life cast of my head and shoulders, and then they did a body life cast as well because the Clive wanted the leather costumes to be as tightly fitting as possible. So they covered me in plaster of Paris from my knees up to my elbows and up to my neck. Well, they wrapped me in cling film first, I remember, and rubbed Vaseline all over that. And I remember they when we did the that the body cast, they got plaster of Paris dripped onto my toes because I was barefooted, and I just got caught up in the hair on my big toe, and it was so painful to remove. It's my most memorable. I didn't. It didn't worry me being underneath the head cast, not being able to hear. I got used to that idea. I think they did a couple of them, and they'll have done one for. Yeah, they will have done. I don't know if they must have done one for each film, both Hellraisers and Nightbreed. So I got kind of used to the idea of doing those. So those weren't. And it didn't worry me as far as I remember. It didn't worry me particularly doing those. So yeah, so I mean, you can count it from when they first started and they did the whole process of sculpting it, making the molds, and Nigel Booth is the young man then, who was a young man then, who was responsible for bringing Clive's vision to life in a physical form. And actually getting into the makeup itself, it was about an hour into makeup and costume because the way it was put together was I'd have a bald cap put over my hair because I had hair in those days, and they super glued that, not super glued, they spirit gummed. Super glue comes later. Spirit gum the bald cap, and then they put the teeth are, as it turned out, plastic replicas of my teeth, which sat outside my mouth and were attached to dentures that fitted over my teeth. So when you see the chatterer chatter, that's me making the movement. And I believe the noise is the sound of me chattering these plastic teeth. And I'm pretty certain they used it in they used the same sound effect in subsequent movies. Because I've watched a couple of the others, and you hear the chatter coming down the corridor. If it's not the same sound effect, they're recreating it very accurately between the different films. So yeah, so they put that on, and then they put the mask is like a balaclava mask with a slit up the back. So it fitted over the teeth, which are outside my mouth. And then they cut up condoms and then use super glue to attach the teeth to the mask to represent gums. Because if I just chattered the teeth, chatted the teeth, is that a verb? Then you just moved the teeth and made them chatter. Then they would have just moved inside the mask, and it would mean they'd give away it was a mask. But by attaching it, it looks as if it's part of the mouth and there. So they did that, and so I always remember the smell of super glue. I hate the smell of super glue. And then they squirted KY jelly um, to represent saliva into the mouth, not my mouth, into the gums and so on. So getting into the costume and the makeup and so on, ready to go. That was about an hour in total. So I had it very easy because once we'd finished shooting, all I had to do was just take the mask off and take the teeth out and detach the skull cap. That took 10 minutes at the end of the day. So I was lucky. I mean, Simon Bamford and I had the most uncomfortable, distressing masks to wear because we couldn't hear, speak, or see when we were wearing them. But that was really pretty unpleasant. But at least we didn't have to get in there for 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go through 4 hours of makeup, sitting in the chair. I say, people are impressed by how long it takes to put the makeup on. But the actors are kind of lucky in that all we have to do is sit in the chair and stay still. It's the makeup artists who are actually all got the skilled job at 4 o'clock in the morning, applying this stuff and on their feet all the time. So they're my heroes, those makeup guys.
That's awesome. Now, I it's because of the the makeup effects itself that um, is part of what attracted me to horror movies and sci-fi movies to begin with. I've always been a huge advocate follower of the various makeup artists of the
Mm.
80s and 90s, and I've actually interviewed a couple makeup effects artists. One of them is the great Robert Kurtzman from K&B Effects, and the other is actually a local guy by the name of Steve Tolan, who owns a company called Tolan Effects, which has actually been doing some projects with Doug Bradley uh,
All right.
recently. Yeah,
Oh, cool. Is this Doug appearing as Pinhead at
yeah,
conventions or? Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
What?
they did. He was telling us about that the last time I saw him when we saw him last year. Um, one of the Days of the Dead. Can't remember which city we were in. But yeah, Doug was explaining what it sounds really very, very cool.
Yeah, yeah. I have to. Steve is a great guy, up and coming. His shop is up and coming. They're gonna have something really big break out soon, and I'm hoping that with one of my screenwriting projects that's um, bound to happen sooner or later, I can help um, get their effects company involved, being local people and everything.
Mm, mm,
Because I've seen some of the stuff they can do, and it would be an honor to kind of like help, a Pittsburgh based company that deals with that stuff to uh, kind of branch out into becoming a much more well-known company.
mm, mm. Excellent.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I also, I guess, wanted to ask you now, am I correct that the Cenobites um, in the script had dialogue, but because of the makeup that it was hard to speak the dialogue?
That's true of Simon. That's true of Simon and Butterball,
Okay,
but not of Chatterer. Chatterer never had dialogue.
okay,
Yeah, it was always really obvious. And funnily enough, I think it's one of the reasons, and people have told me this over the years, is I think it's one of the reasons that he's actually so scary for some people is he doesn't speak.
right,
He just attacks you. He
right,
doesn't,
right.
there's no reasoning with Chatterer. Pinhead, you can have a conversation with, and you can bargain. Laurie bargains with Pinhead. Chatterer just goes for it. He's just a thug, basically. But yeah, no, it's poor Simon who lost who lost his lines, which were then given to the female Cenobite. So yeah, it's a shame, real shame for Simon.
Now, I actually have a funny thing to tell you. I'm actually interviewing Simon on Thursday.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah, and I just got an email over the weekend, which I'm trying to set it up with Barbie about doing an interview, Barbie Wild from Hellraiser 2, to do
yeah.
an interview. So
Oh, excellent.
the only two I have left now to knock off the list are Doug Bradley and Clive Barker. Um,
Right.
and I kind of just have to say this. I went to school for screenwriting, and
All right.
um, the Hellraiser movies and just Clive Barker's work in general has you know it's just been one of the top um, influences on just my imagination in general, because I don't think any other filmmaker captured the world of like what hell would look like better than Clive Barker, and just in capturing just the terror, but yet the beauty behind it at the same time. It was something very, very unique. And one of the things that I really want to do is to adapt the Scarlet Gospels into a screenplay, and I really want to bring that, like, have that bring back, like, kind of like, disregard all the other Hellraiser movies that kind of followed after um, part three, and kind of have, or even part two, but kind of have, a continuation of the Hellraiser movies, like rebooted
Mm,
with the
mm,
Scarlet Gospels, because I haven't finished the novel yet, but I've been reading it, and it's so entertaining and
mm, mm,
cool, because combining the universe of Lord of Illusions with Hellraiser, I think that's how Hellraiser should be brought back, is combining two of his most iconic movies and characters in a new movie. And I think you could probably even get Scott Bakula to come back as the Harry Duar, and reprise his role. I think it would be something that people would really love, and fans of the
mm,
franchise
mm.
would, get a kick out of.
Yeah, I think Harry D'Amore is a fascinating character. I remember Clive introduced. Trying to think if Harry D'Amore appeared in the Books of Blood. If there's a Harry D'Amore story in the Books of Blood, there may well be. But I remember typing up one of his manuscripts for a magazine called Time Out, a Harry D'Amore Christmas story. It was great. It's a lovely short story, which I'm sure you can find on that. I think it's called Lost Souls off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, he's a fascinating character. He's a really interesting character. Um, it reminds me of John Constantine,
Yeah,
um, particularly in the TV series. Um, and it'd be an interesting idea. It'd be very cool. I think one of the things I love about Hellraiser, I obviously get to watch it quite frequently, which means that I can watch it just with a filmmaker's eye, because I'm doing my own short films now, and the editing is superb, and there's one scene I particularly like when Julia brings back the first victim to the house. Literally, she stands between light and dark, hesitating on the threshold between light and dark. And when they get back to the house, making a decision as to whether or not she's going to go through with it. And visually, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful scene. I was actually very lucky. I was cast as the businessman in the audio play of The Hellbound Heart, on the novella on which Hellraiser is based. I was so chuffed to be given that part. It's coming out 27th of April. Bafflegab Productions have done a dramatization of The Hellbound Heart, written by Paul Kane, who wrote Sherlock Holmes and Something Was of Hell. My memory is so bad. Paul Kane has written the script for the audio play, and a really, really good time in December of last year playing that. But the Hellraiser is just, it really is fascinating watching the editing. I mean, there are some pieces and you just think, oh no, that doesn't work as well as it could. There's a couple of shots in there, but really it's just such a great movie. It really does stand up the test of time. Being able, and a great way of learning how to do shocks and scares and build atmosphere, but also characters. I think that's the really great thing. This is an infernal love triangle, if you like. It's a love story with monsters, but it's kind of like a domestic drama. It's filmed as if it's a domestic drama. And the other thing I think that made it really different as well is the fact that no teenagers were killed in the making of this movie. Um,
Right.
it's very different. It was very, very different to all the stalk and slash. And don't get me wrong, I love Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street. I find absolutely terrifying. Um, but Hellraiser is completely unique as far as I'm concerned.
I absolutely agree. And, I also really pay attention to composers. And,
Hmm.
Christopher Young, basically that is the reason why I follow Christopher Young
Hmm.
is because of Hellraiser. And he's written some phenomenal scores to so many movies that I like, but I pay attention to him because of Hellraiser, and
Yeah.
Hellraiser would not have been the same without the score that Chris Young gave it, and it's such a offbeat kind of score for the film that you wouldn't expect something as like pleasant
Hmm.
and yet like pleasant and mesmerizing as to hear as the score to some of the most brutal and gruesome gore effects and terror that's going on throughout the film,
Yeah.
and especially just the the chime that plays when
Oh, yes.
the box is being opened and everything. It's just lures you in, and it just it's so unique of a score that's become such an iconic score because of those movies, and just kind of totally is a perfect example of how music can totally switch perception of
Mm.
what you're watching on screen.
Mm. But it's orchestral, and which is unusual. I think we're so used to the wonderful scores of Carpenter, which is obviously so electronic, um, and particularly a lot of movies in the 1980s are electronic. Doug, Simon, Barbie, and I were with Christopher Young at a convention in Atlantic City a few years ago. We were on a panel together, and Doug said that whenever he came to revisit the character of Pinhead, the first thing he did was make sure that the score for Hellraiser was on, and he's right back at Pinhead. And when I was writing comics, the Hellraiser comics, I did exactly. I always had the number two rather than number one. Had those on. I always had that, and it just takes you right back into that world, that atmosphere. Christopher, you can't think of Hellraiser in my view without Christopher's score.
I completely agree. And part one and part two are just I mean I kind of have to say part two is probably my favorite.
Hmm.
But part one is still like really, really, really good. And
Mm,
the only reason I think I like part two just a little bit more is because of going inside the box, and
mm.
seeing like the world of
Leviathan.
Leviathan and everything, and also seeing Claire Higgins back in a much darker tone because now she's a demon,
Mm,
and instead of being the hateful stepmother, and she's back and bigger and badder, and of course there's more of the Cenobites, and the doctor, the crazy
Ken Crannon's
right,
Dr. Channard.
right,
Yeah,
right,
he's wonderful.
right.
Ken's become a really good friend, and I'm really and I just think does such a great job of Dr. Channard. It's a great film. It's a very good film. They probably, yeah, and I think it was really fascinating when when the second movie came out, and then we started doing conventions, which I really didn't start doing until 10 years after the first film came out. And those, it was people were either a Hellraiser 1 or a Hellraiser 2 person in terms of their favorites. And it is fascinating to me that these are, that people, because they're very different films. It's a much wider, But going back to Claire Higgins again, I think again masterful performance in the first movie. Um, the uh, the way that she turns from this bored housewife, that you see the flashback of this innocent, well, this kind of country bumpkin girl almost, who even the accent uh, in the flashback sequence, and she just because her whole persona changes over the course of the movie. I was talking to Andrew Robinson on my show, Chattering with Nicholas Vince, on YouTube about a month or so ago, and complimenting him and just talking about the again the fact that you get the contrast between Larry and Frank. And I think Larry is again his performance of Larry is absolutely masterful. He's such a wuss. He's just such a
Right.
wuss, and it's just all the fine detail, but married to this incredibly strong woman. And he's great. I really, really love, I just love that performance. Such a good performance given by Andrew.
Definitely. Definitely. Now, you know, the Hellraiser movies are great, but one of my also all-time favorite Clive Barker movies is Nightbreed. And
Oh, excellent.
I started out, of course, watching the original cut, and
Mm.
I could tell like it was still a really cold movie to me, because it was the first time that I like Hellraiser was like, like a brand new concept to me in terms of the way horror movies were done, and when I didn't see Nightbreed till much later on. I think I saw Lord of Illusions and Hellraiser, the Hellraiser movies before I saw Nightbreed, and I was at a store in Pittsburgh called The Exchange, which basically is like a music, movie, video game store. They sell like cult classic stuff, and not quite a comic book store, but more for like movies and music. And they also do like video games and sell collectibles and stuff. But I was looking in their horror section and for something new and interesting to watch, and I saw Nightbreed, and I heard about this movie, and I bought it, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is like amazing. It combines like horror with action with a major love story, um, going on all at the same time, and it was just so unique to me. And when I found out that there was a director's cut, and it was going to be released, I immediately had to get that, and I watched it, and I'm shocked at how much footage was cut, from the original film,
Mm.
that cut it down to like an hour and a half, where it really was like a little over 2 hours long.
Mm. Mm. Oh, it was more than that, of
Right,
course. I
more
mean,
than
they
that.
basically,
Right.
yeah, well, it wasn't just the fact that they cut it; they just completely rewrote the script. They made it into Stalk and Slash. With Decker as the baddie. And but I have to say, people still love the original movie. The big fans of Nightbreed, which I come across, but particularly I discovered I was at Sitges in northern Spain last year. They have a huge, fantastic film festival. In fact, it was their 50th anniversary last year, and was lucky enough to be invited along as a guest, both Barbie and I, to do a Q&A. And I was amazed at the number of Nightbreed posters that had obviously been put up on a wall and then kept for 20 odd years because they had the little bits of yellowing sellotape still attached to them. Um, and yeah, it's an amazing an amazing film. And I'm so pleased that Clive, through Occupy Midian and the guys in the Clive Barker podcast and that whole movement to that they managed to find the original footage so that they could do the director's cut. And there's now a cabal, the cabal cut that led through the offices of through the hard work of Russell Charrington, who kicked off the idea of doing a director's cut. The cabal cut is now available on Blu-ray, DVD, I believe. Whether or not it's still available or not, I don't know. But yeah, it's an extraordinary film. Absolutely amazing film. I really enjoyed working on it. And obviously a very different experience for me because the answer to that question is it was 5 hours to apply the Kinski makeup. But I had lines. And a really, really cool looking dude.
I definitely agree. Like Kinski is one of my favorite characters in Nightbreed. Um,
Thank you.
just the look and the attitude, you know. It was really just and one of the things I love about Clive Barker, and it's the same thing I love about Wes Craven, is
Hmm.
that they invent these iconic monster type characters with personalities,
Mm.
and that's really what I want to go for with my own work, because I feel like we've lost that. We've lost making, villains with personalities. And
Hmm.
that's was what made those movies so enjoyable, and the cult classics, the iconic cult classics that they are.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. You think about the thing. Um, I was talking about it the other day, and it was a choice of one of my guests on the Chattering with Nicholas Vince show the other day, and it's those men, it's those characters, it's those men. They're not just two-dimensional. You really care about those men trapped in that place and going through what it is they're actually going through. They're really interesting, fully developed characters, which is quite difficult when you've got so many men um, in a movie to keep them all distinguished and care about and present and in what don't know how long the film actually is, but we'll say 90 minutes for average length of a feature film. Um, to make you care about and still deliver all the jump scares and all the amazing makeup and effects, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I mean, from like a Wes Craven perspective of like Freddy Krueger, or or one of my actually, which I think is one of his most underrated movies, is Shocker. Um,
I don't know that one.
Shocker's really cool. It's about this serial killer named Horace Pinker, who Mitch Pileggi plays, Skinner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he has this like connection with this young, high school or college football star who, long story short, turns out to be his son, and basically they capture him after he murders like the guy's girl, the main character's girlfriend, and a bunch of other cops, and they basically like are set to like electrocute him, and he basically makes a bargain with what is essentially like a demon of like media or television, if you will,
Right,
and it gives him the power to like switch bodies. Like his spirit,
right.
like his body dies, but his spirit lives on, and he can like through electricity travel and like go into different people's bodies, and that's how he continues um, doing the murders and stalking the main character until he has to figure out how he's gonna, kill this supernatural serial killer at this point. And as a really cool special effects for the 80s because at like the climax they're like traveling through like the TV waves, so it goes from like old TV shows that they show up in to like new music videos of like the 80s, and it's a really really interesting movie. And
Right.
Horace Pinker, who Mitch Pileggi plays, has some real, it's just like who this guy is based on the way he looks, the way he walks, because he walks with a limp, and the way he talks. It's very like specific dialogue that is very similar to Kinski in the way he had very specific dialogue to the way, Pinhead had very specific
Mm.
types of dialogue, and it just really like defines those characters because it gives them a specific type of personality that like who these guys are just from the moment they show up on screen with the way they look, the way they're dressed, their makeup, um, to just the whole mannerism of how they speak, because they're just that well defined that and well thought out that it really makes them unique.
It's interesting. I love. I remember reading the script for Nightbreed and coming across Kinski's last line in the movie. Um, Cabal, he unmade Midian. I remember just looking at it and thinking, "Oh wow, that is so cool!" Because it's such a beautiful line. He didn't destroy Midian. He unmade Midian. Um, it's pure Clive. That this wonderful use of language. Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, I'm really pleased that you like Kinski. He was a lot of fun to do. He was definitely a lot of fun to play.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, Night. Really, I'd have to put like my top favorite Clive Barker movies are just Hellraiser 1 and 2 and Nightbreed. Then I would put Lord of Illusions because I really do like that movie a lot. Just because of where Hellraiser dealt with hell, and Nightbreed dealt with you know um, shapeshifters and monsters.
Mm,
Um, Lord of Illusions dealt with magic, and
mm,
I really, really, really like his take on magic. Like I had never seen a movie deal with like dark magic and in the way that Clive Barker did Lord of Illusions, and right back to Harry Duar, um, and just what he gets entangled in um, as the story progresses, and how hell is definitely involved with Lord of Illusions, but it's not the main focus. It's like the power and the mysticism of real magic and the both sides of it, the light and the dark, as we were discussing. And
mm.
it's just such an interesting, entertaining movie to me, and I think it has one of the best openings for a horror movie. Um, you know,
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen it since Clive invited us to a special screening of it before it was released. Um, and my memory of it is incredibly hazy. And I know it's back out on Blu-ray at the moment, I think. It is on my list of things to get a hold of and watch again because I really would like to see it again. But it's a long time. I have no real memory of it.
It's really good. It's really really good. Like I would definitely say, as far as the Clive Barker movies go, it's definitely, Hellraisers 1 and 2, um, Nightbreed and Lord of Illusions.
Mm, mm.
I I I liked the Midnight Meat Train, um, but I thought they could have done more with it. Um, and the one that I really liked from Clive Barker most recently was, uh, or well, I guess it's not recent, but Valerie on the Stairs.
I don't know that one at all.
It was a Masters of Horror episode
Oh, okay.
that they did. I think it was in season two, and they only did two seasons. But I don't know if I can't say for sure if Clive Barker wrote and directed it, but it's based on one of his stories, and the episode had Tony Todd in it as the villain, and this like demon monster thing, and it was really really interesting. Um, it was really cool. Um,
Yeah, Tony Todd's wonderful. I mean, love him in Candyman.
yes, well, how could I forget
Yeah,
Candyman? I
yeah,
you
no, it's
know,
brilliant.
yeah,
Amazing movie.
Candyman also. I completely forgot about Candyman. Candyman also is whereas Hellraiser is like, beautiful to watch, and Nightbreed is really, a cool movie, and Lord of Illusions is, very entertaining and interesting with the storyline. Candyman is terrifying.
Mm.
Like I still have some trouble like watching that movie, and I can't um, go to sleep until with that movie on. Um,
Mm.
but it's really a classic, just another classic Clive Barker film.
Yeah, yeah. Well, is it Michael Rose who's the director? Um, my memory of names is notoriously bad. It's just wonderful, and it's the bees in the mouth.
Right, right.
Um, it's a great short story as well. Um, that was based. I mean, I love Clive's short stories as well as the films. The books of blood are absolutely wonderful.
Oh, definitely. Another story that I really want to adapt is Rawhead Rex.
Mm. Which again has just come out on Blu-ray.
Right, right.
I noticed they're promoting it. I've never seen it. I've never seen Rawhead Rex. Again, one of my favorite sh short stories, particularly for the line. There's a line of a policeman where they've come to the farmhouse and there are policemen there with guns, and one of the policemen just says to his boss, "Please, sir, can we shoot the bastard?" I know it's just like the way he says, "Please, sir, can we shoot the bastard?" I doubt if that got into the movie. You have all these wonderful lines in the short stories. And think, oh yeah, that's such a great line. Um, yeah, again another one that I really should. So there's Lord of Illusions and Rawhead Rex. Because it's such a great looking monster. I think they did it's such a great look. Having said that, I think the John Bolton, I think off the top of my head, John Bolton illustrated a comic version of it, which is much closer to the description of the monster in the short story, which describes it as having a round, bulbous head, as if the moon had opened its mouth and there was nothing but sharp teeth. Whereas Rawhead Rex in the movie is very definitely a horse-headed monster, in my view. It reminds me of a
Right.
horse's head. That's different. No, no, my memory at the time is that Clive wasn't that impressed by the movie, um, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to make Hellraiser. So yeah, yeah, interesting movie. I'd be interesting to see it now on proper, um, digitally restored uh,
Same
version of
here,
it.
same here. And that's one that like it's kind of because of like why the like kind of like I know what you mean with the monster, and I think that's why I think that one definitely deserves remade, and I hope I can do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Never say never. If that's what you want to do, then pursue it.
Definitely, definitely. Well, we're just about out of time. I had two questions to ask you to kind of
Mm,
close this off. And
mm.
the first one is, what are some of your favorite films just in general? Doesn't have to be horror, just in general. And if you had any up and coming projects to promote.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, favorite films in general. Funnily enough, I was watching a movie called Razorback uh, in preparation for a show the other evening. That's not necessarily one of my favorites, but it reminded me of one of my favorites, and that's Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Um, that's a great movie, which is basically where you take three drag queens out of Sydney and put them in the middle of the outback, and traveling across Australia, to Ayers Rock, and it's got ABBA songs. It involves ABBA songs. It just looks wonderful. And Guy Pearce, who I reckon is a wonderful, wonderful actor, which would remind me of Memento, which I think is a fascinating movie. I like Inception. In terms of horror, I'm a huge fan of Roger Corman and the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe's. But I'm a big fan of Vincent Price, particularly. Abominable Dr. Phibes and Return of Dr. Phibes, Theatre of Blood, great movie. Really, really love that one as well. From those kind of 80s ones. Um, Trying to think. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Non-horror favorite movies. We'd have to go through all these things that yeah, yeah. I have to go down through the DVD collection downstairs. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've not watched that one in a while, but yeah, the one I really want to watch again soon is Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because it's just such damn good fun. Um, and all about being yourself and learning to be, who you truly are, and being true to yourself as well. Have you ever seen Priscilla?
I have actually. I'm actually a really huge Guy Pearce fan. I
Yeah.
think that guy is really underrated. He's just anything he does, he brings his like 110% A game to, and I just think he's in the moment. Like every
Well, I
time.
think because he's not a movie star. He's an actor,
Right,
not a movie star.
right.
To quote the famous line of Peter O'Toole, "I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star." That was him in a movie rather than talking about himself. Um, yeah, because when you go to see a Harrison Ford movie, you're going to see Harrison Ford, and he's great. And I'm not knocking Harrison Ford, incredibly talented actor, but you're going to see, if you compare the performances in Raiders of the Lost Ark or Star Wars, it's the same guy. It's very much the same guy, and he's incredibly attractive and very watchable on screen and very funny and talented. But when you watch Guy Pearce, he can, plays a drag queen in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. He plays this tattooed guy in Memento. Um, I love his performance in L.A.
Yes,
Confidential.
yes, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Another one I really like him in is The Time Machine.
Oh, yes, which has just come up on Amazon Prime, I noticed. Um, that's a fun movie. That's a fun movie. There's a fun interpretation of the short story. So yeah, I think I think those were off the top of my head. Those would probably be some of my favorite films. Um, but there's lots of independent stuff that I really enjoy watching as well. I was just Hell House LLC is one of the favorites. And see, I interview a lot of guests on my show, on the Chattering Show. I don't want to choose favorites out of them, but I really enjoyed Hell House LL. Stephen Cognetti's Hell House LLC. I think is really good. It's a found footage movie that I can actually watch. I have never seen the Blair Witch Project because I can't watch it. I get motion sickness watching if everything's juddering around the screen. I get motion
I'm
sickness.
like the same way. I'm not the biggest fan of those.
Yeah, yeah. I just yeah, not never going to watch Witch Project. I mean, I'm obviously a huge fan of George Romero's work as well, and Night of the Living Dead, and all yeah. He was just actually Martin. His vampire film Martin is amazing. And I happen to know it was one of his favorites.
John Amlis, that was actually one of, well, not one of my teachers personally, but he teaches at Point Park, and I would see him down there all the time.
Right, right. Really cool guy,
Yeah,
from what I
yeah.
understand.
And
Yeah, yeah.
funny story, just real quick. I actually have George Romero's desk.
Wow, wow. How did that happen?
Um, it was actually, I was getting ready to start Point Park, and I needed a new desk. And I was actually working at that place, the exchange, at the time. And my mom told me that she was going to go to this estate sale that wasn't, very well publicized in the paper. And I get a text from her saying, "I got you a desk. You're never going to guess whose desk it is." And I'm like, I don't know who. Tell me, and she said George Romero. And I'm like,
Wow.
how the fuck did you do that? Um, like, what? Can you say that again? And it turns out that this estate sale was at Christine Romero's house, who had just actually recently divorced George, and they were selling off like merchandise galore. And my mom actually got there after the height, and she got me this beautiful oak wooden desk. That was George's desk.
Wow.
A few scripts, one of them being the original script for Land of the Dead, and a few action figures, some posters, and a few other cool things.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's brilliant. He was such a lovely man. Such a nice man. Really, really sweet. I do miss him. He's very, very nice. But to answer your second question, the other projects that I've got at the moment. As I've mentioned a couple of times before, there's Chattering with Nicholas Vince on Sundays. Funnily enough, I'm interviewing Simon Barnard, who was the producer director of the audio play of The Hellbound Heart. That's this coming Sunday. And then I've got Blair Bathory, who's behind Fear House. She's the following Saturday before I take May off, because I'm away in Texas Frightmare. So yeah, that's another thing that's coming up. I'm going to be in Texas Frightmare along with the rest of the Cenobites and Clive Barker, um, and the first weekend in May, and then the second weekend in May I'm in Edinburgh in Scotland at the Edinburgh Horror Con. Matthew Lillard uh, from Scream is going to be there. And Matthew's also at uh, or Mr. Lillard. I've never actually met the gentleman. Um, is going to be at Texas Frightmare as well. So I'm looking forward to meeting him. I've been doing quite a lot of acting recently. Apart from the audio play, I played a dad in a film called Book of Monsters, which is due out later this year, which is a really fun horror movie. That's one where in the Kickstarter, when they did the Kickstarter, if you supported it, you got to choose the monsters and the deaths and key points. So they weren't able to give me the full script until like a couple of weeks before they started shooting because they were still trying to work out all the different changes they needed to make based on the results of the polls that they'd run of the people who supported the Kickstarter. But it's a great script and it's a great cast and great effects from what I've seen as well. And they did a trailer for that at Glasgow Fright Fest, and that was incredibly well received. So that comes out later this year. I did a day's filming in Italy, North Italy, a few weeks ago, for a film called "Fuck You, Immortality." That's its working title. And I played a monster out of makeup. I was playing an old film director who was being interviewed, just a monster, horrible man. So obviously great fun to play. I've got some filming a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to be doing a movie, which I can't tell you about it yet, but that will again, it's a nice cameo. It's mostly cameos. I've got some other fires in the iron. I've got what else have I been up to? Well, my short film, my second short film as writer and director is Your Appraisal. That is out on the festival circuit at the moment. That recently screened in Canada at Vancouver Badass Film Festival, where one of the male members of the audience was heard to scream, "Oh fuck no!" uh, which I'm going to put on a poster at some point. Um, yeah, that's good. That's doing well. That's actually screening at Texas Frightmare. It's great. I should have a chance to leave my table to go and watch that with some of the folks at Texas. Hopefully, watch that and some of the folks at Texas Frightmare, because it's always nice to see a film that you've made with an audience. There's that one. There's another film called Necessary Evils, which will be part of a anthology called For We Are Many. There's a animatic film that I did recently for the Soska Sisters Blood Drive. That's up on YouTube on their channel. But all this stuff, I mean, basically just head to www.nicholasvince.com and you'll find all the. It is actually up to date. My website is actually up to date. I redesigned it recently to make it as easy as possible to keep it up to date. And I think I'm managing to keep on top of it so far. So you can find out previous guests and link to the interview with Andrew Robinson and so on. So yeah, www.nicholasvince.com. And there's a shop there as well if you want to purchase signed photographs and books and so on. So yeah, I got lots of things on. Which is great.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Nicholas, thank you so much for talking with me and taking the time to swim in the bowl.
I do love this image. It's like it's just like swimming around with goldfish, those plastic deep sea divers that I don't know if they have them in America, but
you know,
we've got bubbles of air coming out of them, and the treasure test that goes blop as it fills up with, and then opens up, and then the bubbles of water go out.
no. I just have to say this real quick, just because I think you'll find it amusing. I
Uh-huh,
found basically what is the greatest Halloween costume of all time, and
uh-huh.
all it is a fish mask.
Okay.
I get to be me, Sam Fish. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
just Sam
brilliant.
Fish.
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, yeah. That is superb. That is a very, very good. That's very good.
I think for this year I might find like a big, cigar to put with it. So, you know.
A cigar smoking fish. I do like that. I do like that. I do like that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Nicholas, thank you again. I would love to do another interview at a future point. I will send you a link to this as soon as it's posted. I'll
Okay.
be honest, I have a pretty large backlog of episodes right now, but I'm gonna try and get this one out a little sooner than some of the
Okay.
other ones. But as soon as it's posted, I'll send you a link, and please come swim in the bowl with me anytime.
Okay. I'd be delighted.
Awesome,
Glug,
awesome.
glug, 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 glug. Take care,
You
Sam.
too, you too.
Speak soon. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.